Having that ability to, upload public Wi-Fi to us and then validate it's still there is a great reason for them to come back to the app and have a lot of interactions with them. And at the same time, we're collecting a lot of data on exactly what routers are out there and how common they are. And so another thing is our entire firmware for our router is built on what's called OpenWRT standard. And we can actually collect the most common versions of routers and make a Roam OS version for the most common routers, and then allow our community to upgrade them as well.
So Jeffrey, welcome back to the Building in Public podcast. I want to kick us off by talking about the pilot burning pool because it's live as of January 25th for Roam, which is the project you co-founded. So tell us about what that means and maybe some of the game theory behind it.
Yeah, so obviously heading towards our TGE, we want to educate the community both on how the mechanism works, as well as just get the bugs out of the system, right? Get the bugs out of the front end and everywhere there. So it's actually gone fairly smoothly launched. There was a couple issues we had to attend to, but it's gone fairly good. Well, the main point around the token for Roam is that it's on a fixed emission schedule. So every 1,000 seconds, there's a certain amount of emission that then decays over time into the future. It's similar to say maybe a Bitcoin, but in a more like gradual decay way of emissions. And so at any given time in those 1,000 seconds, people can basically convert the points to the token, and then depending on the demand at any given time, that's the result. So we're not in any way dictating like a market conversion ratio or anything like this. There's just a free open market system that allows points to be converted. So a lot of game theory there. Obviously, there's certain times would be more competitive than others. You could spread it out. We have an embedded DCA tool method built right in. So you can put it over, multiple cycles and probably encourage people to do that. So yeah, that's the basic mechanics of it.
Gotcha. And you guys are pre-TGE right now, right? But it will be sometime soon?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's like a redemption mechanism for the points to tokens, but the tokens are like locked in the wallet, or I'm assuming, or like there.
Yeah. So the token hasn't even been generated yet. So we haven't had the actual generation event, but these are going to be tokens that come out of the the allocation to begin with. So that will happen post TGE. But yeah, at this point, it's that's why it's the pilot program right now.
Okay. And how are users earning those points? Like, what did they have to do to receive points?
Yeah. So our project is a global communications Web3 communications platform, I guess you could call it now. Started as a global Wi-Fi roaming platform. We recently added the eSIM capability to it. But the way people earn points is through adding to our network. So whether it's setting up a miner like myself here, and or adding other Wi-Fi locations to our system that are in public and in public places, as well as actually one of the most important things is validating the network itself. So all DePIN based projects suffer or need to address the issue of validation. So people, obviously there's always some value at stake. So people try and cheat quite often and will try to deploy things that aren't real or spoof things that aren't real. So a strong and valid validation process mitigates that. So our process is where someone goes to a public place and connects to one of our routers or a public router, and we have an active process of the user handshaking with the end Wi-Fi, creating an on-chain transaction. So that actual validation process is where we confirm that there is a connection, it's available, it's in the right location. They're saying those general sort of features, and then we reward users for doing that. So that's probably the most common way that people earn points is through the validation of the network.
Gotcha. Because there's obviously a lower barrier to walking around and connecting your phone to a Wi-Fi hotspot versus like buying one, for instance, and setting it up. But okay, that makes sense. Talk to me about open roaming and how it works in a Web 2 sense, because I'm aware that's it's like a Web 2 phenomenon. You guys are kind of partnering with them or adding their hotspots to your network.
Open roaming itself is an initiative under the WBA. So the Wireless Broadband Alliance is the global advocacy group for Wi-Fi standards. So their goal, the main members of that group are the global telcos, everyone from AT&T in the US to Deutsche Telekom, Rogers here in Canada, the major telco equipment providers like Cisco, Huawei, etc. Um, we are also an official member. So their goal there is to advocate for the proliferation of Wi-Fi and certain capabilities of Wi-Fi globally. And open roaming is a core goal of theirs. And the idea here is that when you drive down the road using a SIM card or a mobile network and you connect from tower to tower, or I even drive across the border to the US, I connect to a US tower. I'm not logging in with a password. It's a certificate-based authenticity system. So this uses the exact same thing where we have a certificate in your phone that authenticates you on a Wi-Fi network, and you can move from Wi-Fi network to Wi-Fi network in a secure way. So there are a couple really good examples of this around the world. The biggest and probably best example is called Edirome. Actually, all the universities in the world use a common Wi-Fi certificate. So I was studying in Europe over 10 years ago, and I remember using Edirome, and it was a really slick, amazing process. So in a lot of ways, it's surprising that open roaming isn't more prevalent than it is already today. But there's a strong push behind it. And a lot of the push comes from the capabilities of Wi-Fi itself. So as we've moved from 4G to 5G and now even further on the mobile spectrum, that gives you higher performance, typically more speed, more bandwidth, but less range and penetration through urban environments. And so these mobile operators and telcos really want to utilize Wi-Fi today and especially in the future to backhaul a lot of data from your phone that is through a Wi-Fi network. So the idea here is almost a singularity between both cellular and Wi-Fi, and from the user standpoint, they really don't care. So you don't really care how the data gets to and from your phone. You just want it to work really well. So that's where we're heading, and that's the goal of open roaming. And so we're the only official Web3 identity provider to that, where we can give someone a certificate, and you're willing to accept other members, users, and vice versa. So our users can roam on 3.5 million nodes globally today.
It's nice to jumpstart your network like that into the millions of hotspots from day one.
Yeah, exactly. That's been a very interesting take on it. Is that it is sort of a growth hack that our users, even from day one, have access to this huge network of services. But ultimately, we're really solving a large problem for the Web2 side. Like, it's the telco side that's quite excited about this. It's WA that got really excited about this, of saying, they can do everything they can to push the telcos to go and upgrade their personal networks, like in a city core or in an airport or these really high density areas. It's a lot harder to get that technology to reach the sort of end last mile users in cafes and restaurants, where they upgrade the router hardware and software to facilitate it.
Gotcha. So then let's talk about your hardware, because I understand you guys have 2 devices, 2 Wi-Fi hotspots you're selling. How many have you sold? Like, what's your go-to-market there? Because it sounds like you do want to incentivize like net new deployment of Wi-Fi hotspots, right? Like, you want to build off 3.5 million you've already got access to, but you want to build out your own network as well. So talk to me a bit about the supply side for your hardware.
Yeah, so the hardware itself is built by major Wi-Fi suppliers. My co-founder Yen is from China originally and worked in telco for the last couple decades, so he has very deep relationships there. So we have a kind of a 3-pronged strategy. We have our own router that we want to sell, but obviously it's at a higher price point than maybe the average user for what it is and the capabilities of it. It's actually a well-priced, good, capable router. It has a lot of compute powered storage, RAM, et cetera, et cetera. But we understand that that's not where the entire market is. So we want to sell our own router, and we want to introduce new versions coming that are already in the works, and hopefully reach better price points. The second part is onboarding all the open roaming nodes, so our users have the access to the whole open roaming network globally. And the third part is allowing users to add public local Wi-Fi hotspots, like the cafes they go to, like the restaurants they go to. And this has been, a multi-pronged strategy. The reason for this is also there is a density component of being able to offer enough value to users where they can come back and and interact with us on an ongoing basis. So having that ability to, upload public Wi-Fi to us and then validate it's still there is a great reason for them to come back to the app and have a lot of interactions with them. And at the same time, we're collecting a lot of data on exactly what routers are out there and how common they are. And so another thing is our entire firmware for our router is built on what's called OpenWRT standard. So it's an open source version of the firmware that runs on a router, and we can actually collect the most common versions of routers and make a Roam OS version for the most common routers, and then allow our community to upgrade them as well. So this is in the pipeline. Right now, we're collecting all that data of what are those models that we should target first. So that's been the strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Helium just did something like that or announced it, right? Like any passpoint enabled Wi-Fi router from a bunch of big brands is able to, I think the owners have to do something in the settings, configure something, but they can add the hotspot to the Helium network. I think it only works for offloading for Helium mobile subscribers at the moment, but it'd be cool if in the future, like, T-Mobile could pay Helium for all these kind of, I think they call them brownfield deployments, when like Wi-Fi hotspots are already out there and then they get added to a network retroactively.
Yeah, our team is actually testing it from like our routers can also support Helium. So we're all passpoint and open roaming. We're built on top of the same open source architecture. So our routers could also support basically mining the Helium mobile network. Yeah, so that it's all the same technology.
For sure. And then, I mean, I know you guys haven't TGE'd yet, but it sounds like you're pretty close. Talk to me about building on Solana, the Solana ecosystem, kind of your experiences there so far.
Yeah, it's been great. Like we so my co-founder and I started on this over 3 years ago. It was fall 21 when we first got started on this. So it's been a long journey of getting it to where it is today. And also, and a lot of that was also betting. So the one really unique piece of technology that we came up with was the tying a DID identity together with the open roaming protocol and certification system. And so that's a really bleeding edge new way of doing things, solving things for the Wi-Fi and Web 2 industry. But getting that to actually work on every Android handset out there was a huge challenge. The team worked in a long time to get that support and to make it work on all the handsets available. We actually originally launched on Harmony chain originally because we got an investment from Harmony early on. So we built the entire first sort of version of it on Harmony. But as we saw Helium make the jump to Solana, and then I was at ETH Denver, and I went to a multi-coin event and talked to some of the team there, and we saw a lot of trends towards DPIN moving towards Solana, or a chain that could really handle it, as well as just the ecosystem going there and the amount of overall interest and value within the ecosystem. So I think it was a really good choice early on to make the switch. We've been happy with it so far. The Solana team and foundation has been very supportive of us. So yeah, we're excited.
Awesome. And then let's go into decentralized identity and the verifiable credential. Like that sounds like a net new invention on top of like the whole Web 2 open roaming idea. So yeah, I guess talk to us a bit about what you created there and what's the functionality, like what's the utility for the average user?
Yeah, so open roaming. So the typically the two ways Wi-Fi certification had been done before was through SIM cards. So actually the SIM card also acting as a certification for Wi-Fi, or through the username and password. To log into. Here in Canada, it would be like a Shaw Open or Rogers Open system for the telco. So the telco industry has always suffered from a challenge of how do we even share these login information with our other WBA members in a safe and secure way? So how do we, if you're an American AT&T user and you go to Germany and you're on Deutsche Telekom and you want to log in and use the network there, how do we authenticate that in a very secure way? And so it was Yen's idea, my co-founder's idea, to tie it to a DID identity that basically a user carries with them themselves. So instead of having it in a server or on the SIM, it's actually in the wallet. So by tying that wallet-based identity, it's a self-sovereign identity on your phone. It could be wiped at any time. You could create a new one. That was sort of that was the piece. And then the VCs, the credentials for it is simply the Wi-Fi access credential that we then tie to the DID.
Gotcha. So it's like a Web3 version of the certificate that would allow my phone to connect to like any open roaming hotspot, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And then on the demand side, there's a lot of different ways to go to market, right? Like we've seen Helium Mobile launch a mobile plan and MVNO. We've also seen different projects try to like sell offload to different carriers. So how are you guys thinking about the demand side? Like where do you see revenue coming in from? And then also, how do you plan to accrue to the token if you do?
Yeah, so the demand for us, obviously on the Wi-Fi side, has been a little bit different. That like versus Helium is more focused on the Wi-Fi side of building out the roaming capabilities. However, we did add the eSIM capability in to offer a more all-encompassing connectivity solution. So in between Wi-Fi, someone's roaming around, we can really handle the whole deal. The focus on that so far has been much more emerging markets and or roaming type experiences for people in the West, versus Helium, which is going after a primary SIM strategy right now. So they just announced today sort of the free version of Helium Mobile. Again, it would give you like a small amount of gigabytes, and then the average user will end up upgrading, and in the end, it's sort of a loss leader CAC strategy. We have a similar strategy where we offer, free amount of data for doing certain services. For us, it's all monetized. So, we have like certain ads and certain promotional monetization tools within the app that'll actually pay for the data itself. So you could, as a user in certain countries, essentially earn to be connected. You could almost have a free cell phone package. So a little bit different strategies there. There's other monetization angles that we are developing right now that have to do with the actual router itself. So having a decentralized, distributed network of hardware around the world has capabilities, and those capabilities, from CDN services to VPN services, each of these routers, especially with the compute and the performance that they have, could actually do real world work like CDN type content delivery. And those networks and services are very well established with certain price points and generate real world income. So those are the things we're working on now, is how to drive, monetization of the network through multiple angles. From a very active user base that goes to our app, we have roughly around 1 million check-ins a day in our app. So even if you think about like the telco industry, there's very few telco related apps that people would even open up more than once a month or two to check their bill, typically. So that's a very unique, different take from that active check-in validation process that we have users coming back consistently. So there's a lot we can do there to promote our ecosystem and people building on top of us and working with us in different ways.
For sure. So yeah, that's Roam growth is what you mentioned, right? Where you've got all these nodes all over the world that can do other things beyond just provide wireless connectivity potentially, right? They probably have some small amount of computer storage on them. So maybe CDN, maybe decentralized storage, maybe a bunch of different things. So that would almost be like, deepens or like Web2 infrastructure companies could be your customers there. I get that you sell eSIMs too. I mean, eSIMs are great. Like plug and play, scan a QR code, especially when I'm traveling internationally. It's just the easiest thing to do. You don't even have to go into a store or anything else. So also selling eSIMs to end consumers. What about, like, do you see telcos as your end customer ever? Or do you ever plan to like launch a mobile plan yourself?
So yeah, it's one of those two things. Yes, there's definitely a future where telcos are buying access to our network and offloading on our network. And this is a long-term goal of WBA right now as well, is to build a unified, agreed upon billing system of exactly how that would work. We have a lot of different members and everyone's sort of backing on to different infrastructure, especially in a distributed way. So yes, there is a future where telcos would be paying to offload data to a network like ours. And two, yeah, so we actually got this feedback from a certain investor who was talking about this, that, there are maybe people like you and me might look into doing eSIM whenever we travel, but there are a lot of people out there that don't think about it that much, to be honest, and might be looking more for a primary solution that just has really good roaming um, uh, uh, price points and options, right? So we have a very interesting roaming strategy with ours, where it's just a credit based amount, and then whichever country you go to, it just charges you a different amount. So you don't have to, tip like a typical eSIM today, get a new eSIM every time you go to a new country. So that could be rolled into an all-in-one primary SIM as well with the country that you live in. So this is just a marketing sort of pricing strategy. We're also constantly working to, improve our pricing and get new suppliers. So we're working with the biggest eSIM suppliers in the world and trying to pass that savings on to our customers to have the best, most competitive rates.
So the 3.5 million hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots that the Open Roaming Alliance has out there, they haven't monetized at all with telcos in terms of data offload.
No, not really.
Surprised.
It's in some ways it's even it's even harder, or the situations are even more unique, where the locations of where these isn't fully mapped. Each of the telcos has certain hotspots out there. So there is a lot of this very primary value that we can bring to the network of even finding these hotspots and mapping them correctly. There are some early databases for this, but it hasn't been fully done. So like a fully agreed upon billing system is also something that's been discussed within the organization.
Yeah, billing system verification, pinpointing of where the hotspots actually are. That's almost surprising to me though, because it sounds like the open roaming hotspots are in pretty good locations with pretty good uptime. They have 3.5 million of them. Helium has like 25,000, and neither of them have monetized. It makes me like question.
It's still, it's still, so there's a rough estimate of, this was a while ago, over 600 million public hotspots globally. Maybe it's 800 million today. So it's still very early days as far as infiltration and the number. Yeah, it is surprising. These organizations, like, they do only move at a certain pace. They're it's a member association. Everyone pays sort of, fees to join it and promotes things and stuff. But each individual entity within it has their own goals as a company or as a service provider.
For sure.
So yeah, it does take time to roll these things out. I often think, just in, say in a 5 or 10 year time horizon, what does it look like? And that's where it's hard for me to imagine a world where we're not living in open roaming is very, very common 10 years from today, where your certificate based, because just from a security standpoint too, like a certificate based authentication system is far more secure than any password system out there. So even from that standpoint of enhancing networks, I think we're moving this direction. And then there's just the simple convenience for users, and then there's the advantages for the telcos of drastically lowering the capex from deploying these new cellular stations. So deploying small cell 5G in urban environments is extremely expensive. So the capabilities, so you have a two-pronged thing, that it's not just the cost of Wi-Fi is dramatically less, but even the capabilities are expanding as well of what Wi-Fi can do.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the infrastructure's out there and it works in terms of the 3.5 million hotspots. So it almost sounds like the WBA needs like a coordination and an incentivization fix, and maybe that's what you guys will help them provide, right? Because if you get a lot of your own hardware out there, then you start to compete on the supply side in terms of like, hey, well, we're bringing 1 million nodes to the table, you guys have 3, so you have more leverage there. And then if your incentive system's working in terms of verification and pinpointing location of hotspots and just getting more hotspots out there, I think they would have to maybe start listening to what you guys had to say, and maybe you could lead them to telco data offload in a big way.
Yeah, that's what's exciting about the Wi-Fi space. Maybe the interesting connection between Web3 crypto and, say, Wi-Fi is that it is all built on top of open common standards. heading the same direction. Like we all want all of our devices to work everywhere. And so in a lot of ways, like, the success of Helium or the success of other players just benefits us more as well. Or the bigger the telcos deploy open roaming, that's better for us. The bigger we get, it's better for the telcos. Ultimately, it's a all on board type of strategy to get the 600 million globally to be upgraded.
What are you excited to roll out in 2025, the rest of the year for
Yeah, we've got a lot coming with obviously with the growth, and our discovery program is another one where having a globally distributed network of hardware in addition to an app that's very active and has a lot of user base come out to, we want to be a platform for other projects to launch and be successful as well. So we've been encouraging a lot of partnerships with different deep in projects, and using that sort of as a launch pad. So between the growth and the launch pad, obviously TG coming up, there's a lot. Obviously new miner development, all sorts. So it's a huge year. Yeah, it's lots to come.
Let's go. Big year for Rome. Where would you like to point our listeners to on the internet to find out more about what you guys are building, get involved in the community, etc.?
Yeah, we can be found at weroam.xyz. We're in both app stores. Just download the app. The best thing to do is just download the app and give it a try. And yeah, we're on all the socials, but yeah, find the links through the official website. Be careful. There are spoofers out there, especially now that we've, heading towards a TG and stuff. There's a lot of phishing and spoofing going on. So be very careful to all of our users.
For sure. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, Connor.